Welcome into the 83rd episode of the Sabremetrix podcast. My name is Bill. Alongside me, as always, is Walt. Walt, how you doing today, man?
Doing pretty good. Going to have a lot of Sabres stuff to talk about this episode. Obviously, with our first episode after the draft and the start of free agency, so somewhat excited to talk about the Buffalo Sabres.
Oh man, that was quite the draft, quite the live stream that we had. We had to cut it off after 3+ hours, and they were only on
Yeah,
pick number 20. So appreciate everyone that came out to that. That was a lot of fun. Really looking forward to doing that in the future. This is for anyone listening just simply on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. This is actually the first time that we are live recording this podcast. So, anyone that is for some reason putting in comments or questions or anything like that, we're going to address them at the end. So, stick around for that. So, well, let's get right into it. First things first, the NHL draft. Obviously, we were there to react live for the ninth overall pick, but just wanted to get your thoughts not only on Murtka, but some of the other players that were drafted, the entire process, everything draft related that you wanted to get out there. Walt, what do you say?
I think we kind of covered like that Redeem Mirko pick in depth when they selected him. Like he's not the highest ceiling of defenseman. He does fit like an organizational need. He is kind of a safe projection to an NHL role, but he's still so young and moldable that you really don't know what his game's going to look like at the NHL level, or honestly, what his ceiling or floor will be. So yeah, it's a pick that it's weird because he's still so raw, but he's still like a pretty safe bet to become an NHLer. So he's a weird mix of a prospect. And you'll see a lot of like national draft ranking stuff being like, oh, it's a little bit of a reach here. I don't think it was that crazy of a reach considering the talent on the board, but it's definitely not one of those picks where you're like, oh yeah, this is a guy we'll be able to build the franchise around. Like it's more of a pick that like this is a player who can fill out the lineup, could be a good complementary piece to the guys we currently have. And then later on in the draft, second round pick, obviously traded. I thought that was kind of a bummer. Did get a decent player back in Timmins though, so
Yeah.
still think they could have gone for a cheaper price and a high second, but it's the Buffalo Sabres we're talking about. And then third round, David Bukowski. I think this is a guy who some people probably think Mirka is when they see Mirka 6'6". Like
Yes.
Bukowski's a guy who he's physical, he's violent, he'll throw hits, even at times where he doesn't need to throw hits. He probably has like more of a bottom pair projection, but he's a fun physical player. And I think there is upside with him getting NHL minutes. So you'll always take that with a third round pick. And then, just looking like later in the draft, like Matush Kuharik, he's once again projects to more of a bottom lineup role. Then yeah, you really don't have too many like higher upside swings later in the draft. I think you have a lot of guys who could maybe with the right development, sneak their way into a few NHL games. They didn't pick a Russian goalie. They picked a Belarusian goalie, Evgeny Prokhorov. Almost messed up that pronunciation. They picked him in the 7th round. Just got picked by Flint today too in the OHL or the CHL import draft, so he could possibly be coming across the pond playing the OHL this season. Same thing with Kuharik. So, some interesting pieces to add to the Sabres pool. I still think it's kind of crazy. They made 3 7th-round picks and 2 4th-round picks. Like they didn't even try. There wasn't a guy they liked more than others to package those up and move up a little bit later in the draft. I guess not, but they'll have a lot of lottery tickets to scratch off, I guess. Like just those dollar scratch offs. Like that's pretty much what those 7th-round picks are.
Kind of want to go back to what you said about Murtka and Bitkowski. And I want to reiterate that it seems like Bitkowski is the player that some people that might not know too much about Murtka think he is. Murtka is more of a aggressive in the sense of, not giving you a lot of time and space and using his reach. Take some like interesting angles to try to stop possession for the other team and stop rushes for the other team as well. Definitely a very raw prospect Murtka is, and you can see sometimes he gets a little tunnel vision, which is normal. It's going to happen. I mean, he just came over to the United States this past season, so he had a split season between Czech Pro League, and then coming on over, apparently he thought his English was pretty good, but realized it wasn't as good, which, I mean, frankly, that's understandable. I'm a young kid, and I'm sure he'll pick that up. I mean, just maybe when you heard Darlene the first time versus now kind of thing. It just takes time, and you can understand that as well. So
They got
Murtka,
Prospel too in the AHL as a coach too, so that should help too.
yep,
I mean, I don't know when he's making the jump over, but at least they have a guy that speaks his language. They won't try to Victor Antipin him in
for sure.
Rochester.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a good example. But yeah, with Murtka, yeah, on the defensive side, it's not like he's, he'll physically engage, but he's not blowing guys up. On the offensive side, he's not an Owen Power kind of, moving along the blue line and walking the blue line and making plays like that. You see a lot of more, he gets the puck at the point, he's either putting it back in the corner and getting it down low, or he's just taking a pretty low percentage shot, but at the same time, he's trying to get it towards the net. So it's not like he's doing anything crazy offensively, but a safe and solid player. And when it comes to Bedkowski, and that's pretty much the extent of my knowledge of these guys, I thought that was probably the best post-draft interview I've ever heard a Sabres prospect give. Maybe there's another guy out there that got drafted by Winnipeg like 4 years ago that gave a great one, but I personally thought that was fantastic. He's my personal favorite just for that sake, and that has nothing to do with on ice. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to his playing ability, it is that's great if you take the body, but we also saw that with a player like Rasmus Ristolainen, and it was taking the body and pulling yourself out of the play. And that's the last thing that the Sabres want is, look, I crushed this guy, and or in general as a team, yeah, we didn't take any crap from anyone, and we got
I
into
feel
all
like the
these fights
Sabres
and
do
look how
want
many
that
hits.
though.
But at the same
But
time,
their
like, it
off
doesn't
season, I
matter.
feel like they do want that.
But it doesn't matter if you do that all the time. You feel good about yourself, but you lost 5-2. You lost
It's
4-1.
fine
You
though. They're
lost.
tough to play against. And that's all.
So like
That's the only
that's
thing that
that's where it comes
matters.
from. And that's not just one player. That's an organizational thing. So with Bedkowski, I hope it's just, kind of refining everything about his game, keeping that snarl, obviously, but at the same time, making sure he's not chasing hits because there's a time and place to be physical, and I'm sure he'll get his opportunity for that. So anything else about the draft players or anything else about the draft? Last question I was actually going to ask: do you agree with not taking Roger McQueen and taking Murtka simply because there were so many questions around McQueen's back issues?
Yeah, I definitely don't blame them for being, a little bit cautionary on taking a guy like McQueen. I do think his upside's still really high. I do think he has elements to his game that are a little similar to Tage too. So it's like if you have a guy like Tage, I feel like that'd be the perfect player to put under Tage's wing and kind of learn from him. But it's not like an egregious pick where it's like, oh, it's crazy they picked Merck over McQueen. Like I could definitely
Yeah,
understand an argument in someone's draft rankings where they have Merck ranked higher than a somewhat riskier pick in McQueen.
agreed. Agreed. And I think it was also a great thing that they immediately put him on a chopper and sent him to go hang out with like the Lightning McQueen thing out in Anaheim.
He's wearing number 95 too. That's pretty
That's
legendary.
as you should. If he didn't, I would have been upset. You know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about? So, yeah, I think that's really cool. Big Cars fan over here. So, yeah, I can understand where they're going from. One, right-handed defenseman, commodity. Obviously, they were looking for that, and two, just the uncertainty of back issues. And yes, McQueen can look really good coming out of this draft, but it's high risk, high reward, and I can understand why they went with Murtka. And I don't think it was that much of a reach, too. I saw some people that cover draft prospects putting them in like the low 20s, just because there are certain things that they didn't necessarily like. I don't know, maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but I don't think the Sabres did anything crazy there. So I guess let's get into a couple of the trades that happen since they do relate. Connor Timmins coming from Pittsburgh to the Buffalo Sabres, joined by Isaac Beliveau. And that was a deal that sent Connor Clifton and Buffalo second round pick back to Pittsburgh. What do you think about Connor Timmins and the pick in general? And what did you think about Connor Clifton's time here in Buffalo?
I do think the trade was nice because it did get Clifton off the roster, who kind of struggled last season. You do get Timmins, who has really good metrics for a third pair guy. So, I kind of like what they did outside of the fact that they gave up, a high second round pick. I know everyone's like they don't need any more prospects, but just because you don't need any more prospects doesn't mean you have to accept bad value in trades. I think that's a bad value trade because sure, you could bring up like Connor Timmins charts and like, oh, look how blue these numbers are. And I know he played top pair minutes or second pair minutes with Erik Karlsson a little bit in Pittsburgh during a short time there. But then they were talking about a guy that's probably going to be playing like 14 minutes a night. Like he's probably not going to be paired with one of those top guys, especially if Byram's coming back because he still hasn't been traded yet. And maybe Byram's moved. Maybe they'll have to force him up into a top 4 role. But I'm just thinking, like, is it really that big of a difference between him and like Jacob Bernard Docker, where you'd be able to save $1 million with JBD? He wouldn't get you killed on those third pair minutes, and you wouldn't have to give up that high second round pick who, it's worth taking a gamble on some guys because the prospect pool right now, I think it just lacks that deep upside. Right now, they have a lot of guys who can maybe project to third or fourth line roles. Those are cheap guys to trade for once they actually become NHLers. Like you could trade for a fourth liner right now we saw Sam Lafferty, like a 6th round pick. So I think to take safe swings in the draft and, trade away picks where you can have a little bit fun with it, it's from a value standpoint. I just wasn't a huge fan of it. Like I could have been, a bigger hater of this trade if Timmins was a much worse player. Thankfully, he's not. But I just don't like the value with it, especially considering that he was a part of a package that was dealt for, like, I believe, a 5th round pick at the trade deadline. Somehow his value after a few meaningless games with Pittsburgh increases to a 2nd round pick. Like, I just don't understand it.
I think the one thing with Timmins that really stood out to me and made sense why they got rid of Clifton and brought him in was the penalties. Connor Timmins is not he's very good when it comes to taking penalties, and Connor Clifton was just, along with some defensive gas and everything like that, just the penalties on top of that. It was the same thing with Sam Lafferty, to be completely honest with you. There was a month stretch where if there was a game without a Sam Lafferty penalty, that was astonishing. And that's something where, like, if you're going to play that small of a role, 4th line, 3rd pairing defenseman, you can't be taking penalties and putting your team on the back foot like that. So I can understand that perspective. I also don't really hope they don't force Timmins into a role that he's not prepared for. It's kind of like the same thing I said with Kesselring as well. But if he's a 3rd pairing defenseman, I think he's probably, just as good, maybe a little bit better than Bernard Docker. I also think he's a lot better than Connor Clifton and Henry Jokiharju. So I would rather have Timmins worth a 2nd round pick. Like you said, not too long ago, he went for a 5th round pick. Yeah, it's not great. It's not great. I kind of wish it was maybe a 3rd or 4th round pick that got sent back. But at the end of the day, it's an NHL player. And like 2nd round picks can hit, but they also sometimes don't. So I do agree that taking a flyer on a high skilled guy would have been the best way of going about it. But look, they got an NHL player back. We'll see what kind of, how long he actually sticks around and what results he gets, because just because he has good results in Pittsburgh doesn't mean he has good results here, and depends on who he's playing with. Hopefully it's not Samuelson. So that is the Timmins trade. Like you also mentioned, Sam Lafferty was traded to Chicago for a 2026 6th round pick. To me, getting anything back for Lafferty was a plus. Getting that $2 million off the books. I'm assuming you agree, Walt.
Oh, that was easily. I do know as someone that was wearing a Sam Lafferty sweater on our last live stream, but I do love that trade. I think it's an awesome deal. Because I was just looking at like some of the lines the Sabres used last season and like their expected goals for percentage. And like the 4th line, I think everyone was kind of expecting if they did put Lafferty in the lineup would be him with Peyton Krebs and Beck Malenstein. And that line got absolutely obliterated last season. Like outchanced like 2-1. Like, they just completely like siphoned off any offense at all. And were pretty much stuck in their own end trying to play defense the entire time, which are not horrible like defensively, but when you can do absolutely nothing in the offensive zone. Like, just watch like a few clips of Lafferty in the offensive zone. Like, it's borderline
tough.
insane. Yeah, like I do think he has an NHL role because of his speed, but yeah, just watching what he does in the offensive zone when he finally gets there. It's like, you're just playing to see how long you can keep the puck along the boards and really nothing working its way to the middle. So yeah, just being able to get rid of him, I think that's a huge win for the Sabres. I think that alone could, improve them by like 1 or 2 standing points somehow.
Definitely. And it was, what the comparison that I actually came up with? Yeah, Lafferty's more physical, but Anders Bjork, where it just feels like they're out
Oh
there for
yeah.
glorified cardio. It's
Yeah.
just like, let me skate up and down a few times and get the heck off the ice. Like, that's kind of how it felt. Like, at the end of the season, he did start playing better, for sure. I'll give him that. But you also have a sample size of like 70 games where it was literally just penalties and crappy play the entire time. It's not going to work.
Yeah, can we talk about how silly the Sabres look with their thing last offseason with targeting speed, with the Panthers winning back-to-back Stanley Cups with, really not fast players at all. Like, they're really like
Yeah.
Einsteins on skates, but they're not speedy players. And so it's crazy, like, I don't know, it's just a direction this team takes where it's like, oh, yeah, we need to target speed. And then 12 months later, it's like, oh, we need to, target grit. It's like this team has no identity. They're just
It's
free falling and trying to find an identity.
It feels very reactionary, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy.
And it doesn't feel like a recipe for success. Like some teams can pull it off, but like, sorry, Sabres don't really get that kind of benefit of the doubt. So we are recording this on Wednesday evening, 7:30-ish p.m. So like you said, Byram has not been dealt yet. If that comes up and you don't hear about it, that is why. Anything else when it comes to the trades? I don't think there's really anything else. Maybe the rumblings that we're hearing about Byram and let's talk about Byram after free agency, just because there's plenty to go on there, and I don't want to get caught up in the Byram talk and then have to fly through free agency. It shouldn't take us too long anyway. I'm going to save the whole JBD, our boy, situation for a little bit. So let's go over Alex Lyon. Actually, I'm going to go with some players that are a little less exciting. Jack Rathbone re-signed for 2 years. It's a two-way deal. I find that purely as an AHL move. I know he was mentioned that he could fill in on Buffalo. That is worst case scenario in my mind when you're having to call up guys like that. Tyson
Yeah.
Kozak re-signed for 3 years, two-way deal next year, and then the following 2 after that are one-way deals, and he's at league minimum. Let's see here. Ryan Johnson, 3 years. I believe he has the same two-way deal in the first year, and then the last 2 years he is on a one-way deal, and he's also a league minimum of $775K. Tyson Kozak, we already went through. Ryan Johnson, Justin Danforth. Now we're starting to get into some guys that we might want to talk about here. Justin Danforth, 2 years, $1.8 million per year. This is a guy that was actually on the Sabres ECHL affiliate team back, I don't know, a handful of years, between 5 and 10 years ago. He was playing for the Cincinnati Cyclones when they were part of the Sabres organization. Any thoughts on the signing of Justin Danforth?
He's a player that I've been, watching for, probably about 9 years or so now, because I found his career arc so interesting. Like you said, he signed an AHL deal with Rochester. So that means like he's not able to be called up to the NHL. He's like in between AHL and ECHL. Yeah, spent most of that time with the Cincinnati Cyclones. Then he made the move over to Europe. He was one of the best players in Liga, the Finnish league. Had like a crazy offensive season there. Went to the KHL, had great offensive seasons there. And then, he got that NHL contract when he moved back to North America. So pretty crazy career arc for a guy like that to have success in a top league in Europe like that. And then, get that NHL contract. And he's someone where Columbus fans love him. So, I'll take their word for that. I think he's a, good guy to have in the bottom of the lineup. He won't get you killed in his minutes at 5-on-5 like Sam Lafferty did. So, I'll take it. It's cool. It's a cool story too. Like for a guy, to start off with like the Amherst and Cyclones, not even on an NHL deal, and then he carves out pretty decently long NHL career. I think it's cool from that perspective because this was a guy who was at Sabres development camps way back. Like he was back there when like Alex Nylander was at those camps. So it's cool to see it kind of come full circle and him, get a decent contract with the Sabres.
Yeah, and it's kind of reminds me of Colin Blackwell as well.
Yeah, a
Minors,
little bit.
minors, 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 and finally cracks the NHL and doesn't look back, maybe later in his career, but still a really good thing to see for him. We'll see how he works on the Sabres. I think the big thing that at least the team's excited about is his aggressiveness on the forecheck and playing that rough and nasty to play against kind of role. Again, if you're sacrificing a bunch of skill for that, we'll see how that actually works out. But like you said, interesting career arc. Interested to see how it works out for him. I think also someone that is able to kind of like you said with his career arc and the different places he's gone and how he's had to fight tooth and nail. One, I'm sure he's going to be a good practice guy because he's like, look, he's one of those like my job can be taken from me at any point, and he's a veteran and he can teach these guys like, look, I understand some of you might have been handed, $3.5 million per year contracts for guys that don't produce. I have no idea who I'm talking about, but yeah, I mean it's definitely a benefit for someone that of that age and that has kind of had the up and down journey to have someone like that in your locker room. Let's get to some more exciting guys. Alex Lyon, 2 years, $1.5 million. What do you make of that signing? Do you think it's just a James Reimer but can play a few more games and it's still UPL's net? Do you think it is to have Levi stay in Rochester? What do you make of that situation? I have my own opinion, but I wanted to hear yours first.
Yeah, I do think it was a good move, just in terms of getting Levi to stay in Rochester another season. Because beginning of the playoffs, I was like, you know what, Devin Levi looks ready for an NHL role. That Laval series, like I know you shouldn't read too much into like a handful of games against a really good AHL team, but he was like legitimately not good
Yeah, it was
during
bad.
that series. Like he just
Yeah.
let in goals he should have saved, and at the end of the day, he kind of let down his team as well. So I think for him, I think even he probably wants to, kind of get a redemption arc for that group in Rochester. I think he definitely realizes that he wasn't that great down there to end the season. And he's a competitor too. So it'll be interesting to see how he comes out the gates in training camp this year. So I think it's a good deal from that regard because, it gets Levi down there. And Alex Lyon himself, he isn't terrible backup goalie. Like he probably profiles slightly better than James Reimer did. And James Reimer was really solid for the Sabres last season. And Lyon's like, 3 or 4 years younger as well. So I do think it's just a solid signing. They barely had to pay him that much either. Like he signed
Yeah.
below market value. And,
Yeah.
I think he did the Sabres a favor with that too. I think he thinks back to that game where he was in net for the Panthers in 2023 and that must-win game for the Sabres, and he absolutely stood on his head. And the Panthers just barely beat the Sabres. Like off that offsides challenge, that would have tied things up. They beat the Sabres. So maybe he's, giving a bit of a discount because he feels bad for us.
Hey, whatever the reason is, I don't care. Yeah, I think it was a good signing. Gotta, we try to call balls and strikes here. Obviously, we do have our own opinions as fans, and especially me, I can kind of go off a little bit, but you know, give credit where credit is due. I think it's a pretty good signing. And yeah, I'm in the camp of it's a Reimer that's a little bit younger, that you have a little bit more control over because it's not just a 1 year thing, and he can play a little bit more as well. And if UPL really stinks, then you have someone that you can actually lean on for multiple games. And I don't really see a downside of it to let Levi cook a little bit more too. I know he needs to get re-signed, but Sabres have team control, which look, I this offseason doesn't necessarily mean that the player's
Yeah.
sticking around. But I think, like you said, Levi kind of wants his redemption. He had a very good regular season, but I don't know. For him specifically, it kind of mirrors what's going on with the Maple Leafs. It's like, yeah, you had a great regular season. What'd you do in the playoffs? And let's see that again. If you can, have another stellar season in the regular season and perform better than he did in the playoffs, then I think we're looking pretty good. And I don't think you can over develop especially a goalie, leaving him down there. I don't think there isn't a rush to bring him up, especially when you get a guy in like Alex Lyon. Last free agent to discuss as of right now that has been re-signed is Ryan McLeod. He signed for 4 years at $5 million per season. What are your thoughts on the Ryan McLeod re-signing?
I thought that was a great deal. I
Yeah.
think being able to get McLeod for 4 years, very reasonable cap hit. He's someone who I think his game will work on any team at any stage. So I think just being able to get that deal done was, just awesome for the Sabres because he was someone where,
Yeah.
like you said, team control seems to not really matter that much with this Sabres team. It seems like if you're a little bit unhappy, they'll send you packing towards a better situation. It's like not even a punishment. It's like you're being rewarded for being
Yeah.
unhappy. Uh, so just in terms of that, yeah, just the safety of having him here 4 more years, great depth to have. I thought it was a
Yeah.
fantastic deal.
I think for the concern that I have at center depth, I definitely don't have it for the third line center because McLeod fills that. And I thought Team Friendly was going to be 5 years at $5.5 million. I thought he might sign for 6. I even thought, who knows, maybe they really go crazy and give him 6.5 over 5 years, maybe 6 years, something like that. But 4 years, $5 million. I think it's a good deal. I think he's earned that, especially
Yeah.
with, saying, hey, I think I can repeat what I did last season. And yeah, I mean, want players that want to be here. I think it's a good deal for not only the Sabres, but McLeod as well. Gives him that security. And, you know, maybe some other teams, maybe some better teams, playoff teams wouldn't be paying him as much. So, hey, good for McLeod. I think that pretty much wraps up on the free agents that have been signed as of now. Again, we are recording Wednesday night, so we'll see who else comes down the pike. So let's move on to our next topic, which is I don't even know where it is. Okay, yeah, let's get into I'm going to save that for last. Let's get into the Bo Byram situation. What do you do, Walt? What do you do with Bo and Byram as of Wednesday evening, July 2nd? Do you keep him on your roster for the rest of this season? Do you keep him on and see maybe 20, 30 games in, see if teams start to panic and want to make a trade? Do you try to get him out as early as possible? What is your assessment of not only the Byram situation, but the reports of maybe there's going to be an offer sheet? Maybe they're using that as leverage. Or look, some of the packages the Sabres really aren't keen on. And what would you want back for Bowen Byram?
Yeah, he's really interesting because he's someone where I was like, get rid of him, at any cost this offseason, because I do think you could get a good trade return for him. Now, as we kind of enter, later on in the offseason, we're post-draft, obviously, 2 days in free agency, but, NHL free agency moves pretty quick. A lot of the guys are signed. A lot of teams are already putting their plans in motion for next season. They're already trying to figure out forward lines and whatnot. So I think it gets a lot more difficult to move Byram now. I mean, there's definitely still a lot of teams interested. I do think it makes sense to move him, but with how the Sabres have set up their lineup right now, it's not really set up for a, defenseman for forward swap, at least a defenseman of Byram's caliber for a forward, just because you're going to have to backfill a 6th spot with either Zach Jones or Jacob Bryson, and that's definitely not ideal. You're going to have guys like Samuelson, guys like Kesslering, guys like Timmins, like at least 2 of those guys will be in your top 4. So ideally, it's not a situation where the Sabres can make, an easy Byram for a forward equivalent trade. It probably will have to look more like the Peterka trade, where you get a defenseman back and you get a forward back. Am I really interested in making a trade where you get, a 3rd, 4th line forward back and another 3rd pair defenseman back? Not really, because I feel like the Sabres roster right now, is just overflowing with those guys. So I think they're kind of in a tough situation where their roster is not set up for a D for forward trade. Byram, financially, they could easily fit him under the cap, but does
Yeah.
it make sense to pay a guy with his skill set a ton of money? Like if some team offer sheets him, I don't think they will, but if they offer sheet him like $8.5 million. Is that something that I'd want to match just to walk Byram to free agency? Because I hate to say it, but I know everyone's thinking it. Like the Sabres, if this season doesn't go well, like we could be in the middle of a hard rebuild this time next year. Well, I want a guy like Byram sitting on this roster with the $8 million cap hit that you can't move like this time next year. Like I'd rather almost get futures for him now. Like I'm not saying they should trade him for futures, but if we had that offer sheet that breaks into that 2 first-round pick, 1 second-round pick, 1 third-round pick range, I'm 100% letting him go and just taking the picks and, just trying to figure things out internally.
Yeah, I mean, you could use the picks as ammo. Who knows? A second-round pick could be dealt for something crazy. So, yeah, I think with Bowen Byram it is the one thing I will say, because I agree with everything you said, but the one thing I do want to mention is we know Byram Dahlin works.
Yeah.
We've seen it. And we basically pounded the table basically saying, that's the only guy I can play with. Well, that's still like I can see the Sabres saying that's still beneficial to us. Technically, it makes us a better team next season if we keep him around. Quite frankly, if I were the Sabres, is not what I want to do, but sign him for 2 years. And that would walk him to free agency and see what happens next summer. Maybe someone wants to pick him up. Yeah, you're going to be selling low, but at least you'll be selling while you still have them. I don't really see they've put themselves in a tough situation, especially with how much money they're paying Dahlin, how much money they're paying Power, and quite frankly, how much money they're paying Samuelson. So, yeah, I think that's all I have on the Byram trade stuff. Is I personally wouldn't hate it if he was on the team, just because I do know it works with Dahlin. And what happens if you trade Byram and, like you said, you get back a third pairing defenseman and whatever kind of forward. Is it Kesselring that's playing with Dahlin? Is it Timmins? Is it Samuelson? That's that's terrifying to me. I don't like that. So, quite frankly, I don't mind if Byram stays around, but I also kind of think him probably shouldn't have gotten to this. So we'll see. We'll see. The same gripe that I had about the Peterka trade is probably what I'm going to have about the Byram trade is you're trading the best player in the deal. But it seems like that's probably how it's going to go. So
they take away like all their flexibility too. I think that's the other problem. Like we're already pretty deep in the offseason. Same thing with the Peterka trade, where it's like their right-handed defensive depth last season was abysmal. Their, decent defensive forward depth was abysmal. And then you're forcing yourself into these trades where you're looking for one specific type. I think they did the same thing with this Byram situation. Like if he doesn't re-sign with the Sabres, which, with all the fire from his agent coming with like, oh, there's a offer sheet coming. Like, I think it's pretty clear. Like we've seen this with the Peterka situation too, that this guy probably, isn't crazy about being in Buffalo. Like he won't like willingly say to the media, like, I don't want to be here. But it was like the same thing with Peterka, where you could obviously tell like he's not crazy about being here right now.
Like he's a good pro. He'll be good about it if he is, but it's and
the
like
Sabres
like dying to be here.
The Sabres always trade guys like that too, and they trade them at a loss. So I guess that's kind of my main concern is they just dump them for a package of win now pieces, like quote unquote win now, where you're adding a fourth line forward and a third pair defenseman and just kind of hoping things work out for you the next 3 years. So that's kind of my biggest fear because, when things, which will likely go south this season, go south, you're just going to be stuck with a stockpile of, third line forwards that are 29 years old. And you're going to be like, what am I even doing here?
Well, going to be getting some draft capital back at the trade deadline for playoff teams to bolster their depth. I think that's probably where they're headed.
Yeah.
So that's the latest on the Bowen Byram situation. Again, if anything else comes up, we'll probably make a separate video on it. So there you have it for Bowen Byram. I think, let's talk about JBD. I meant to bring him up before the Byram thing, but let's be honest, people are here for the Byram talk. I also saw that we had a comment that was talking about Ryan McLeod. We will get to comments after we technically end the episode. We didn't want to put that in there, responding to all these comments for anyone that was listening on maybe Spotify or Apple. So we wanted to keep the podcast going. We'll come back. Any comments, questions, anything like that, we will handle at the end. So, Jason Bernard Docker. Walt, he came over in the trade with Josh Norris for Dylan Cousins and a second-round pick. After playing a handful of games with the Sabres, he was not even qualified and ends up signing just over league minimum with the Detroit Red Wings. Kevin Adams addressed it today, but Walt, wanted to get your opinions on that, and if you wouldn't mind giving the side of the story that Kevin Adams had for not qualifying him and keeping him around.
Jacob Bernard Docker, I think a lot of people thought that he was someone the Sabres, specifically targeted in that Norris for Cousins trade. I think with everything that kind of unfolded the past 40 hours, we realized that wasn't the case, that they literally just threw in a second-round pick for a guy whose trade value is probably significantly less than Cousins because he's older, he's more injury-prone. Frankly, don't think he's as good. I do think Cousins has a higher ceiling than Norris, and the Sabres were caught in that deal, giving up a second-round pick. And then a guy like Bernard Docker, they decide not to give a qualifying offer to, so he becomes a free agent, signs with the Red Wings today for a little bit above league minimum. I think right around what his qualifying offer would have been if the Sabres did offer him that. So, it's interesting. I do think it's like a waste of assets. Like, I don't necessarily think the Sabres were targeting Bernard Docker by giving up that second. I just think it was just bad negotiation, and second-round pick was just a penalty they had to pay for bad negotiation. It's kind of like the desperation penalty, too, because the Sabres were kind of operating from area of desperation at that trade deadline, with Dahlin obviously wanting to speak to management right around that time, a few days before that trade took place. So, not great. I think it's just, another example of misuse of assets with the Sabres. Like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, second-round picks, a lot of them don't become NHLers. Like Kisakov and, Poltapov still never played a game. But, they can be used as currency in trades. They can, sweeten things up in a bigger package deal. They can, get you a pretty decent player straight up. So I think just to, punt away these second-round picks, especially for a franchise who, 05, 06, and 06, 07, I don't think those years happened without their 2 second-round picks in 2001, or at least 2 of their 3 second-round picks in Jason Pominville and Derek Roy. Having those guys, developing in Rochester, turning to stars, like those were the 2 pieces that helped put the Sabres kind of over the top in those years. And, they helped the Sabres be a somewhat decent team when Breer and Drury left. And then even thinking about the guy they picked with their 2020 second-round pick, JJ Peterka, like, sure, he wasn't great defensively last season. He was in the other seasons, and he played fantastic hockey for the Sabres pretty much all 3 seasons, especially on offense. And that was, a somewhat higher-end piece they picked with a second-round pick. And the guy coming back in that trade, Shane Doan, or not Shane Doan, Josh Doan, getting them mixed up. But Josh Doan, he was also a high second-round pick. So it's like, we're surrounded by these high second-round picks that become decent NHLers. It's crazy to me that the Sabres think it's okay to punt them away for, an okay fourth liner in Beck Malenstein. Like, he's not like an incredible fourth liner. Probably not a huge upgrade on like Gergensons, for example.
Yeah.
Then you trade a second for Timmins, who was literally part of a package where, they got a 5th-round pick coming back just a few months ago. And then, obviously the second in this Bernard Docker situation. So it's crazy that Bernard Docker has to get himself thrown into this situation where a lot of people are bringing up his name just to kind of show, how mismanaged the Sabres team is. But, at the end of the day, we've just seen so much of this. And I think it's kind of a throwback to the Bottrill era in terms of just, just those minor mismanagements, just always getting poor value back. And eventually it adds up, and eventually guys ask out, and eventually you have to rebuild. So I think it's just kind of a throwback to that era. Because, Bernard Docker, at the end of the day, he's not like a crazy good player. He'd have been fine depth. Like, I feel like a lot of people aren't really upset about, the fact of just losing Bernard Docker alone. I know he does have some fans out there. I think he's like an okay 7th defenseman. I think the main story with all of this is just, that asset mismanagement. Like, how many high second-round picks can you punt away? Like, if they have to hard rebuild, next offseason, if this offseason, ends up like this past season did, then you're going to be wishing you had, the guys you picked, those high second round picks, like a Cole Hudson developing in college or the minors. Like, you're not going to want a fourth line forward that you're going to have to probably, punt away to some other team for a fifth, sixth round pick.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's not necessarily about the player himself, but it is kind of funny. Hey, right-handed defenseman, hot commodity, really hard
Yeah,
to
that
get.
part too.
We're going to let him go. Bye. But we're going to sign Jacob Bryson in the middle of March because we feel bad for 1 year when we signed him super late or something. Like, I don't know. I would rather have Bernard Docker than Bryson.
Oh, easily. Even just
Go
on
ahead.
handedness alone, because they don't
Just
have a lot of right-hand shots.
Yeah, absolutely. Just on handedness alone, because you have Johnson down there. Rathbone
Rathbone's left-handed.
Is he a lefty? Yeah, and I believe Zach
Yeah, I think the
Jones.
only right-handed guys
Miss
in
Zach Jones
Rochester.
on our free agency
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
That's on me. I didn't have it written down.
I mean,
Apologies. Hand up accountability.
That's kind of a guy in a two-way deal. I guess that's somewhat
Yeah, it's not
easier
like it
to
matters
miss.
that much, but
looking at the right-handed shots, and Rochester, it's just Komarov is a right-handed shot, and Zach Metza, who just got an NHL deal, he's a right-handed shot. So yeah, those really aren't two guys you probably want playing NHL minutes next season. So yeah, the right-hand shot depth right now, the NHL level is just Kessling and Timmins.
yeah, and Darlene, fair enough, can play on his
he could play
on
his right side.
I don't know. I mean, it seems like they care about handedness a lot, and yeah, they have a bunch of prospects that are righties, but it doesn't help you now because, especially with prospects for me, the guys that were drafted this year don't even talk to me for like 3 years. I don't even want to see you.
Yeah,
just
at
develop
least.
well, enjoy, be good, don't get in trouble, and that's about it. The one thing about the Norris Cousins deal, everything like that, no matter what you say about Dylan Cousins, besides the one, like, he had his issues for sure, but the best ability, what we talk about a lot, is best ability is availability. And Dylan Cousins is available a lot more than Josh Norris, no matter what you think. And look, it was not working with Dylan Cousins here. Don't know, gripping the stick too tight, was way in too far into his own head. Whatever it is, he was still able to play a lot, and he was still able to center a top six line again with mixed results. But that's something to consider as well. Like, you're paying more for Norris. You gave up more in the deal for him, and he isn't playing. So obviously hoping for nothing but health for him this season. But I think we also saw from a lot of his analytics, he's not necessarily a play driver or a playmaker. That's why I was personally on the Marco Rossi thing. Like, do I want a 5'9" center that might have like kind of like an attitude like JJ Peterka? Not really. But he is a
Yeah.
play driving center. It was the same reason why I wanted him when they drafted him. At the time, that was before Tage blew up at center and before Dylan Cousins looked good and then everything fell apart. I was like, they need a play driving center, a playmaking center. They still need one. And that's why I was personally on the Marco Rossi thing. Now, it's not like I'm broken up about it, but I was definitely on board for the Peterka for Rossi or whatever it might be. But yeah, that's another aspect of that trade that we need to consider as well, is just the simple availability of the players, regardless of how they played. Like, if you're not in the lineup, you're not helping anyone. So
yeah, it's just that's kind of the main thing, because it's always like, oh well, if Norris was healthy, he was scoring at this per 60 rate. It's like, well, is he even gonna play over 50 games? Yeah, that's kind of I know a lot of his injuries are like, oh, they won't carry over to next year. It just seems like there's always something new with this guy in terms of his health. So that's definitely not ideal.
Which, like, yeah, it sucks for him because, like, he has to live with this stuff. Like,
yeah,
he has to go home away from the rink and have to like live with this crap. That sucks. But at the same time, it's like, this is the NHL. It's a business. It's predicated on results and winning. Like, it's ruthless. So we have to call this out, unfortunately. I wish I didn't, but we do.
unfortunately. Life of a
Yeah.
Sabres fan.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. I don't like because it's the same thing we've talked about with Samuelson. It's like, "Guy's always hurt," and it's just like, sometimes you can't help it and stuff, especially last year when he
Yeah.
kinda got, like, weird slew-footed and stuff like that, but unfortunately, it's the fact that you're just not on the ice, regardless
It
of
just
the
kind of
situation.
reminds me of like, do you remember when Bogosian was here and some guy like tweeted at him
Oh,
uh,
I'm pretty
about,
sure it was a woman tweeted at him
yeah, I
about
forget who it was.
I don't know,
They
it was just
it was like a
some
meme of like a guy in like a full like body cast or something, and then he like quote tweeted it and was like, "I challenge you to
yeah,
work out with me every day this off season," or something like that. That was peak Sabres drought. Like that was like
it's
prime
great.
time Sabres drought lore.
Yeah, he was like, "You'd be puking on yourself if you did the workout that I did," and I'll be like, "Yeah, you're probably right, but
Yeah,
I don't know, like,
yeah. I'm
you're
also
literally
not
paid
making.
millions of dollars to do this,
Yeah,
and that person
yeah.
is not paid $1,000,000 to do
Yeah,
that."
it's like
So,
I'm an accountant. I'm not making $4 million to play in the NHL. I probably won't be able to do your workouts.
I'm in accounts receivable, all right? I don't need to be doing a wind sprint with a what are those oh, man, the little, like, parachutes
Oh, the
kind of behind them?
parachute things.
Oh,
Yeah.
man. I remember being at hockey camps, and they made us do, like, the rubber bands thing, where you'd be skating, 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 and you're pulling this rubber band, and you're going
Oh yeah.
nowhere, and next thing you know, this person goes flying by you. It's like, "That sucks." Yeah, I remember that was, like, actually run by some guys that were pro hockey players, but I don't they weren't NHL players, but yeah, I mean, like, they showed us a little bit of what they do on the off ice, and I'm like, "That sucks." It's a lot, but
Yeah.
again, this is, like, their job. That was their job. That's what they were
Yeah.
paid to do, so, yeah,
Oh yeah.
look,
Speaking
that's
about those on ice workouts, I guess we could bring up, Sabres development camp being this week. I thought
yeah, it's
I don't know if you
interesting.
saw the roster for that, but they're not doing
Yes.
things like they used to. Like 12
No.
defensemen, 8 forwards, 5 goalies. They're somehow going to have a scrimmage tomorrow morning. Like I feel like anyone that attends that should get their own float on the Sabres parade if they ever win a Stanley Cup. Like that's going to
Who
be
was
an
it?
absolutely diabolical event.
I responded to someone on Twitter today because they were there, and I'm like, "Your loyalty to the crest is
Yeah.
impeccable."
Like imagine
It's
a
incredible.
3-on-3 scrimmage with 12 defensemen, 8 forwards, and then someone to rotate
Lotta
in 5 goalies.
lotta dump-ins, lotta dump and
Yeah, it's
chish.
gonna be
As a former defenseman myself that had 0 hands, a lot of dump and chase. Gonna try to get the puck in behind the defenseman and grind down low, you know what I mean?
yeah.
It's gonna be ugly. I mean, hey, who knows? Maybe Murtka pulls out like a toe drag between the legs, but ugh.
Oh, yeah,
It's
one of the comments says 2 goalies in each net, so that may actually make sense with like they almost have more goalies than forwards, which is gonna be pretty funny. I know I tweeted about this yesterday with
goalies
the
on the ice.
2015 Sabres development camp. Like just the images and recap of that game. I think they had a little over 17,000 fans at that game. You had Reinhardt on one team, Michael on the other.
Yeah, that was
You had
great. I
other
remember being
guys
there. It was
sprinkled
awesome.
throughout. Yeah,
It's
like it
crazy.
was free tickets for everyone too. I don't even remember like how the ticketing process worked, but I remember free admission, and they filled up that arena. Had to delay the game a half hour because of all the traffic. And it was really cool seeing a lot of local guys too, with like Southern Ontario and Western New York getting opportunities to play in that game, get invites to camp. It's how development camp used to be for the Sabres. Like maybe it's just nostalgia on my part, but I really miss like a full-on development camp with like an actual blue on gold scrimmage, like not just a 3-on-3. Like you saw guys like Andrew Podolarski played in that game too, like way back when.
Was
That
that the
Michael
Josh
Reinhardt
Chapman
scrimmage.
year?
Yeah, Josh Chapman, I think, scored the game winner.
Who did he
So,
fight? Was it Florentino, I think was his last name? Was it Anthony
oh yeah, I
Florentino?
think it was. And Justin Kia played in that game too, current NHL
Yeah, now
referee.
he's, making terrible calls for the Amherst
Yeah,
during their games.
yeah, because
Uh,
I just looked at the old lines for that, and it's like, wow, like prospects like used to like, oh, there's so much hope back then. Like where being a prospect like actually meant something. Where it's like people were excited for these guys, and it's crazy to see now how understandably so, like kind of toxic people have become towards prospects where it's like, oh no, we can't even make a second round pick. We need to trade it for Jack Roslovic or something. So it's crazy to see, like, you know, kind of how prospects used to be a signal of hope for this organization. Now it's kind of a signal of them hanging on to guys too long. And, you know, I do think they did hang on to a few prospects they have in their system right now a little bit too long. It's not the Tim Murray era where he packaged prospects when they were stalling out and, you know, getting grade A pieces. It's a different era now. So, yeah, it's tough time to be a Sabres fan. And I know I brought it up already this episode, but that next rebuild, that's looming. I think that could be next offseason if they don't do well this season.
I don't know where I saw it, but I saw someone suggesting, are the Sabres doing a quiet tank? And I nearly hurled.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you kidding me? They're like, Gavin McKenna, the Sabres could be doing a quiet tank. I'm be like, I will quietly be crying in the corner. Like, I just can't. I can't do
And
that.
if he goes to Terry's Penn State, if he commits there, maybe Terry will be like, you know what? I don't. We should get this guy.
Well, I mean, luckily they will have the cap space available for when McKenna's contract comes up.
That's what they're saving for. I heard they're just saving for also the following draft too. When they get Landon DuPont, they have to make room for that as well.
Gotta make room for those guys. You can't block those guys that aren't even drafted yet. You can't do it. Oh, brother. All right. Well, last topic, which I don't know, I was kind of going back and forth on, but it's been talked about enough. I think we can get into it. Article from the Buffalo News came out basically saying Joe Pinter, who has been producing Sabres games since 2002, excuse me. Almost said 2022, and that would have not been that long, but he's been there. Joe Pinter since 2002. He's been working for the team for 37 years. I don't want to read that entire quote, but basically, he was told that his services were no longer needed. And another quote, this one's actually was more interesting than, them getting rid of a producer. I'm told the announcers work without contracts, which makes them subject to review annually. In a way, they may be in as much pressure next season as general manager Kevin Adams, which going year by year contracts with those guys, it's like I can make the case for like the Sabre side of things, but it also seems like a kind of like a power play, if you know what I mean. Like, hey, you misbehaved this season, might not be back. So that really leads us to the biggest thing of it was there was a source saying that the Sabres broadcast, not Sabres commentators like myself, not Sabres reporters or journalists like Harrington and Paul Hamilton and Matthew Fairburn and everyone else, but the broadcast has been too critical. Pete Coelho comes out on Twitter yesterday basically saying, I've said constantly we have a lot of things to work on at the Sabres. A critical broadcast is not one of them. Would be happy to tell everyone that asked. It's tough to respond to everything, but wanted to clear this up. And then today during his press conference, general manager Kevin Adams basically acted like he had no idea what was being talked about. And I'll be honest, to be fair, I kind of believe Kevin Adams on this one. I don't think he was the one that said this because it said it was a Sabres management source that said this. And basically, I wanted to ask you, do you believe the Buffalo News or do you believe Pete Coelho and Kevin Adams and the Buffalo Sabres in this instance?
I'm going to go with I don't believe the guy with the StatMuse Twitter profile that goes by Pete Coelho with his statement. The fact that he even had to come out with that is crazy. And I think, that's pretty damning in terms of, being like, yeah, they're just trying to like cover themselves there. Because I don't think he would have had to come out if it was like a purely fabricated story, because it sounded like he was like, oh, but you don't know all the details. Like, even if that wasn't the case, they still fired, like you mentioned, a guy that was working with the Sabres for 37 years. And it's not the first time they fired longtime Sabres employees. Like, they've fired people from the ticket office that have been there 20 plus years just a few years ago. So, it's pretty par for the course for the Sabres, kind of management team. And Pete Welly, I know he comes online and he's like, "Oh, I'm open to like advice from like fans and like things they want changed." Like at the same time, it's like they still have the tables like at the Labatt Blue Zone that I was eating like Dippin' Dots on when I was in 8th grade. I'm almost 30 years old now. Like it's crazy, like just how like all the little stuff in the arena. Like Pete Welly was here all last season. All the little stuff in the arena is still not fixed. Who knows what will be fixed by next season? So, am I confident in this guy? Being the guy, being like the voice of reason here, being like, oh no, yeah, we actually didn't do this. I'm like, oh yeah, Pete Welly's probably right. This guy's literally done nothing. At least, at least that's visible to the fans to improve the Sabres team. The guy's already been here over a year. It's just like, so yeah, I'll side with the Buffalo News here because it wouldn't be the first time the Sabres have pulled something like this.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I'm not saying the Buffalo News is incorrect or this, but like I don't think it is like Kevin Adams or something. Like I think
Oh
it might have
no,
just
yeah,
been
it's
said in
definitely not anyone on the
passing.
hockey side, but
I feel
even
like
the
it could be like
non-hockey
a
side in Buffalo too still seems so toxic. Like the amount of people that have gotten fired by, any entity that has to do with the Sabres has been insane. Like remember when I forget if it was like the CFO, it might have been the CFO role. Sabres hired him like a few years ago. He's like Terry Pagula's banker, and then like a few months later, the guy's gone.
oh
And
yeah, I
it's
remember that.
it's just like always stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, I'm probably not going to side with the Sabres here. Like this is an organization that handed out a pamphlet when there's still Pagula Sports and Entertainment and had, a little like excerpt on there that's saying like one of the goals is to like maintain the family's lifestyle. Like we're not talking about the best run organization in sports here. So yeah, I'm definitely not siding with the Sabres here. I'm kind of done giving them the benefit of the doubt until they prove to be somewhat competent.
That's the thing, man. It's the benefit of the doubt. They just never get it, whether it's JBD or the Turca trade or whatever else is going on, or this
Yeah,
article.
just the fact that
You
like,
just don't
oh, they
get
have
it.
another
Sorry.
move in their back pocket. Like I feel like we've heard that story the last 4 off seasons. Like, oh, they're creating all this cap space, so they have another move in their back pocket. And then it's like musical chairs. All the chairs are filled, Sabres are left standing. And it's like, oh no, we're gonna have $10 million of cap space that went unused.
Yeah.
And then
Oh
the season
shucks.
starts.
I know our owner's really upset about that, leftover money
Yeah.
not being spent. But yeah, I think with that is the last thing I'll say about the article from Buffalo News is if you are thinking that the Sabres MSG broadcast is too critical,
Yeah, that too.
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I mean, they do a good job when they are employed by the Sabres. I don't blame them for their sometimes like, whoa, that is wickedly positive for no reason. I don't
Yeah,
blame
those
them
guys
because
yeah,
that's
those
who
guys are
pays their
frontline
checks.
workers.
Yeah.
And
So
they're
like,
frontline workers having to watch the Sabres lose 5-2 to Columbus and then drive through a snowstorm on a Tuesday night to some studio in Orchard Park to broadcast a game against the Canadians or something.
like, what do you want? What do you want Rob Ray to do? Just be like, I can't do it. These guys suck. Like, no, he's not
Yeah.
going to do that. Like, fans basically saying like, fans get upset because they're too positive and too nice. And why you guys always looking on the bright side? Basically, the opposite of what we're told. Why you guys always so negative? I don't know.
I feel like
Maybe
they
the
used
past
to
14.
be. I mean, I was so young back then that I like loosely remember like the Mike Robitaille era, but I remember he used to kind of like dig into these guys. But the
Yeah.
expectations with the Sabres was so much higher back then. Like the
They had a standard.
expectations, yeah, it was Stanley Cup. So if they came out poorly and lost a 3-1 game to Montreal, it'd be like, what are you guys doing? Like the expectations of Stanley Cup, they need to play better. Now the expectation is to kind of fart their way into the playoffs, like sneak in with a 91-point season.
Whoops.
Yeah, if you have an 85-point season, oh, it's fine. We'll run it back next year. Like the expectation is so low now that the broadcast can't even be critical because there's no standards to hold these guys to.
It is also unfortunate. Like sometimes I do feel, especially like myself too, kind of get wrapped up in things, can kind of like go off the handle and maybe make something a little bit more than it should. But at the same time, like there's some people where it's like, do you have any standard for this team? you would let them walk all over you and you'd still be a fan of them. Like, I'm still a fan of them and I feel walked over. And it's
Yeah,
one of those things where, like, we're trying to keep a standard. If you go to any other fan base, this crap would not fly. Would not
I
fly. So
know.
it's keeping a standard. And I think, just once they start playing better, people will have higher standard. That's how it works. So again, we're over an hour in. For anyone that has been commenting or putting anything in there, we are going to end the podcast thing of this, but we won't actually hop off stream. We'll hang out, chat a little bit, answer some questions there. So, Walt, before we end the podcast side of this, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about the Sabres before we maybe reconvene next week or the week after?
I think I got a proper event session, and I think I'm probably
Feeling good?
good to go with
Okay.
this episode.
All right. Well, we appreciate you listening to the Sabremetrix podcast, and we will see you on the next one.